Yeah, part two of the dispensation of what we're trying to argue in terms of the books that the Lord God has. I was just talking about the law of witchcraft and sorcery and Illuminati, and somehow we kind of lost battery, but we're back. It's not witchcraft. For those of you may think, man, I think witchcraft is playing its game. But who knows? But the question here is the argument in terms of comprehending witchcraft. But the witchcraft is not an African thing. It happened way back in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, even in Europe and America. And I make a case, some of you have looked at some of our YouTubes, I think you've comprehended that. But we talk about the concept of witchcraft, the etymology and definitions, the roots of witchcraft, inquisitions into incidents, the history of witchcraft, the regulation of witchcraft, sorcery and mythology, and then the criminalization of witchcraft. We have a witchcraft act here. Ask ourselves why the British or the colonial masters brought it. You know, maybe these are things. The argument of what they call it, an ever omniscient threat. How do you deal with an ever omniscient threat? You know, the criminalization of witchcraft, and then the aspect of social, you know, merits and witches, demystifying the idiotic myth of witchcraft and the impact of supernatural power in African communities, for example. Then the aspect of Illuminati, which is another aspect that you need to comprehend. And this is a very important book because it will help you comprehend some of these things and understanding that these are things and forces that we have to reckon with as we speak today. It's not a case for just making you excited, but it's important because we have been fundamental cases, by the way, that argued witchcraft even in Uganda before. You know, I'll give an example of the case of Uganda versus Zenataniu Kombe, which is High Court Criminal Session number 536 of 1967. Think about that, where it was in a monthly bulletin of number 136 of 1967. The accused killed a woman after being advised by a witch doctor that the same woman had actually charmed his penis so that it could not function when he actually slept with his wife. How do you deal with such a case? You know, these are omniscient threats, and these are questions of proof of mens rea in terms of underscoring some of those components. But even this argument of Illuminati, which is a big case in terms of the dispensation of how some people making you know, far-reaching demands in terms of what Illuminati can do in terms of making people rich. Those are questions we try to find out and argue in terms of that. Another interesting book here, which is a new one, is Eurynomics, Tubahirism, and Museveneniko Dispensation, Kaguta's Astute Master of Fundamental Ugandanized Change. And this book is important in the sense that it just gives you an overview of the philosophy of His Excellency as we speak today. So the arguments we propose here are aspects to do with the defining in terms of transformative arguments, philosophical development, in terms of Tubaherism, in terms of Eurynomics, in terms of Museveneniko dispensation. For example, if I'm to argue for you in terms of Tubaherism, my argument here would be an embodiment of a resilient spirit of a nation, a spirit that you know, perseveres against adversity, transcending the confines of circumstances, and this has been, I think, well demonstrated by His Excellency. And then, if you argue in terms of Museveneniko dispensation, which unveils the transformative power of leadership on culture, ethics, and even identity, and then if you argue in terms of you know, Kaguta, in terms of the dispensation of how the spirit that strives for transformation and resilience and shaping values. It's a philosophical discourse, so you want to look at it and comprehend some of the things that we talk about in this particular book. I would love you to take a breath and look at it. If I'm to read for you the abstract, for example, in the you know, tapestry of leadership and societal evolution, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's enduring role in Uganda beckons profound philosophical exploration, and the abstract basically introduces the contemplative journey escapulated in the title Eurynomics, Tubahirism, and Museveneniko Dispensation, Kaguta's Astute Master of Fundamental Ugandanized Change. So within this discourse, this pursuit of transformation emerges as a foundational theme transcending mere socio-economic shifts to probe the very essence of human aspiration. So Euronomics serves as a guiding philosophy that reframes the relationship between governance and prosperity, inviting us to consider the dynamics of empowerment. And then behaviorism is unveiled as a resilient ethic, both as an individual disposition, but also as a collective force that speaks to profound tenacity in terms of the human spirit. And then Mosaico dispensation embodies an era where leadership and culture intermingle, reshaping values and societal identity through this lens. So we dissect the profound influence that leaders wield in terms of shaping ethical landscapes and cultural tapestries. So this is another important aspect for you that you may want to comprehend, and readily available as well. If I'm to look at some other books here that we haven't talked about, here there's another interesting book here. Look at this. This is called the Illusion of Blame: Untangling the Web of Stigmatized Prejudice, Unveiling Betrayal, Scapegoating, and the Hidden Realities Faced by Innocent Muslims. And this is an important book because the argument of how unfortunate the world has been on targeting Muslims because of the fact that they are Muslims that belong to a certain faith. So this is the argument that we're propounding here in terms of understanding the illusion of blame, untangling the web of stigmatized prejudice against Muslims. So we need to comprehend and understand whether or not is every Muslim a suspect. Should that be the case? And these are cases that we make for this, setting a stage for exploration of the illusionary nature of blame in terms of comprehending that particular dispensation. And then the seeds of bias, sometimes that are spread over, examining the influence of the media, politics, and the cultural narratives in terms of public perception, media influence also, unveiling the role of stereotypes in shaping societal attitudes towards innocent Muslims, and then scapegoating and betrayal, or all those aspects in terms of sometimes propounded by very, very big bodies, by the way. And then the philosophical toll of being unjustly blamed in terms of and its effects on these individuals. So you may want to read and comprehend this particular book, wonderful book in terms of that perspective. We have an interesting book here that we need to comprehend. And this one is called The Gospel According to Sui Generis. Now, many people, when they hear the word gospel, they say, wait a minute, isn't this guy committing a sacrilegious sin? No, gospel is basically simply meaning a message. So the message according to Sui Generis. Those of you who have been privileged to have some of our daily quotes, so we have been able to review some of those daily quotes in this book, and this is a book of quotes. So if you want to motivate yourself in terms of some of the things that we go through in society, and there's a quote almost for every situation, in terms of the challenges, in terms of fear, happiness, health, mistakes, accidents, doubt, spiritual awakening, the metaphysics, in terms of all those aspects that you may want to comprehend. So the argument here is to give you thought-provoking literary odyssey that will take you to what they call a transcendent voyage, in terms of giving you an evocative invocation in terms of encouraging you in terms of your day-to-day activities. So we consider this as a book that will motivate you. I'll give an example in terms of loneliness. Loneliness is not void to be filled by others, but a canvas upon which the corridors of self-discovery are actually painted. So that's one of the quotes. But we have so this is a book of quotes. So those of you who like quoting, it's something that will help you in terms of almost every sphere in life. So find that book, it will help you. We have got another super book here called the Sharia Law and Islamic Banking in Uganda. By the way, be mindful that this is volume 2 of our dispensation of books. So this is volume 2 of our audio of our YouTube, because volume 1 we ended on witchcraft and the law as a book, but now we're starting for you volume 2. So I'm trying to go through the compilation of all these books. So this is volume 2. Now this is Sharia Law and Islamic Banking in Uganda. Again, this is another groundbreaking book, interesting book. It basically talks about what Islamic banking is, based on the principles obviously of Sharia, and it underpins its application in terms of concepts that have been derived from the Quran and the writings of Islamic scholars. So these concepts revolve around the value of a sound currency, in terms of fairness, in terms of transactional dealings, and these are the things that we talk about in this book. And this book is important today because Uganda is already practicing some of the things, and you may want to go through some of it, like looking at Islamic banking in Uganda, Islamic economic system, the Hallowed products and the concept, aspects to do with Islamic banking itself, things to do with the lease to own, what they call ijara, things to do with the validity of ijara, things to do with the forms of tacking, mortgages, aspects to do with the first Islamic bank in Uganda, for example, differences between conventional and Islamic banking, advantages in terms of that concept, mortgages in terms of creation of mortgages, depositing in terms of deposits, aspects to do with the murahabaha, aspects to do with applicability of Islamic banking in terms of Uganda today, the instruments that give it resonance, and then aspects to do with the Islamic widow, alternatives to foreign borrowing, for example. So all this has its tenets here. So you may want to comprehend and look at this book. Very important book. Another wonderful book here is it's called the Legal Appraisal of Njaga Cannabis and Associated Medicinal Herbs in Uganda. This is another super important book. You may say I'm not making an advocacy for Njaga, but the argument is comprehending that these are things that we have in this country or in this world. By the way, the use of cannabis, for example, the components in terms of the legality of cannabis, medical uses, the effects of using cannabis, for example, side effects, addiction, cannabis withdrawals, main effects, dangers of overusing it, then the effects of marijuana, and then the comparative analysis in terms of other countries. But the argument here is the legality of cannabis, for example, the perceptions of the drugs, the appraisal in terms of use, and then the argument in terms of the medicinal advantage it has, and then the aspect of decriminalization and delegalization. And that's the argument that we're proponing here. So you may want to look at it and comprehend what it does and what Uganda can do and how Uganda can address some of these challenges. So it's a very, very important book, as I say, today as well. We have got another book here called Ubuntu Bulamandalo, an extra textual and statutory interpretation tool. This is an important book in the sense that it's an escape route for those of you who are judicial officers who want to make this judgments, but you are limited. It's an escape route for you because an extra textual statutory tool, especially if you want to invoke customs and norms as an escape route in terms of the provisions of the law. You could use this, but it's also very important in terms of jurisprudence, in terms of Ubuntu as a dispensation philosophy, by the way. So this is another important aspect, and this is where my PhD is coming from in terms of comprehending what we understand by Ubuntu and the applicability of Ubuntu in terms of its applicability today in Uganda, but also in the bigger world. I think Brother Desmond Tutu said Ubuntu is the Africa's export to the entire world, but you realize that Ubuntu has got different manifestation, by the way, even in other jurisdictions, although not using the word Ubuntu per se. To use the word what is in a name, what is it, that we call a rose can still be called any other name, but the argument of Ubuntu can still be applied in other jurisdictions, like in Würzburg, for example, in Germany. That's how they call it. You may look at it in terms of Harambee in Kenya. You may look at it in Ujamaa or whatever, So stuff like that. So that's another interesting book that you may want to comprehend. Another interesting book here that you need to look at is this one here. This is called Rebels of Jurisprudence. It's called Legal Hall of Famer in terms of the Uganda's legal journals. Here we discuss what you call, the welfare principle should be supreme. Solus populi suprema les esto. And the argument here is in terms of underscoring or trying to understand some of the people who have had substantive legal effect or in terms of the jurisprudence of our country here. And we've got a long list here that we've been happy to celebrate with. We've got the likes of Professor Joseph Kakoza, Professor Joe Lokonyango, Professor David Wachivinga, Honorable Justice Kanyehamba, Dr. Sylvia Tamale, Professor Frederick Sanpewa, Professor Ben Ted Finomgisha, Professor Johnny Davilechi, Dr. Christopher Mazira, people like Professor Echiri Kiwinza, Professor Abraham Kiapi, Professor Baya, Professor Rugumayo, Professor Juko, Professor Wenje, Professor Winfred Anyewa, actually Professor Associate Professor Dr. Narwairo, Professor Kakunguru, Associate Professor Kakunguru, Dr. Kabumba, Dr. Zahara, interesting individuals here. So quite a number of people. I can go on. The list is quite long, very, very long, and many justices. Justice Benjamin Odoki, Justice Wako Wambuzi, Justice David Davidson Lubogo, Oscar here, many Justice Esajinasake. Every person who we have reasons why we actually pointed them out as legal journals of this country, and different lawyers as well in terms of comprehension of what they have done and contributed to this country. So this is called Rebels of Jurisprudence. People who have made a mark, including your friend Mabilizi. No doubt he's made significant contribution to jurisprudence in this country. Look at another one here. Even the rebel himself. Remember the rebel himself? My friend Samakade, senior counsel. So we got interesting arguments. So look at also this one. This is another called Media Law and Policy in Uganda, and appraisal of legal and policy issues in journalism in Uganda. Another one for those of you who are in the media industry and do journalism. And this is a very important book for you to comprehend. We will talk about the origin of media in Uganda, the legal framework, the breaches of media law, aspects to do with the effectiveness of media, aspects to do with social media and the law, aspects to do with the conventions, aspects to do with media self-regulation, freedom of expression in Uganda, and their mandates and what they should do and how they should do it, and different cases that are played out. So this is another important aspect in terms of comprehension of the law of media, law and policy in Uganda. Very important aspect. We've got another wonderful book here that we need to look at. This one is called Sustainable Environmental Law. This is a must read, by the way. This is the feature, if you like, because it talks about substantive important aspects that we have not yet tackled as a country. And we talk about sustainable, of course, development goals, what they call SDGs. We also talk about energy conservation. We talk about renewable energy sources. We talk about renewable energy in Africa. Africa has a mandate in terms of comprehending, has a mandate in terms of comprehending what they need to do, because Africa is blessed, by the way, with extreme natural resources, even from the word sun itself. So renewable energy in terms of utilization, in terms of biogas, in terms of energy use, in terms of unconventional resources, in terms of blue economy, in terms of fossil fuels, butane, clean energy, climate energy, conventional oil, shale oil. So this is an argument for going green, if you like, but also more importantly for understanding that the world must move, and this is the future in terms of comprehension of sustainable environmental law. I think everybody who's doing environmental law should take a breath and look at this particular book. Wonderful, incredible book. We've got another one here that is extremely important, and this is called When Courts Do Religion. I know there's one not in this category, written by my distinguished Professor Oloko Onyango, called When Courts Do Religion. No, When Courts Do Politics. His is When Courts Do Politics, but this is When Courts Do Religion. And at high levels, PhD levels, theoretical frameworks can change. So the argument here is when it comes to religion, he's when it comes to politics. I know some people were trying to jump on my head when they saw this, but it has nothing to do with the other. These are different components. Here we make arguments in terms of how judicial officers have interpreted and comprehended the law using religion as escape routes, and that's the argument that we're trying to propound in terms of this particular book. And when you look at it, it has the concept of religion and the law, the influence of religion on the law, the church versus the state, the influence of religion in terms of emergence of the law, protection of religious minorities, state versus religion, the separation of state and religion, secular state and religion, Islam in courts, religion in Uganda, religions in equity, Thomas Aquinas and natural law, aspects to do with litigation in law in terms of religion. And then we've got playouts, by the way, in terms of some of the cases that have been played out. For example, how when courts do religion, overturning there's one called the Rawunumu's case by the Supreme Court in terms of that contextualization of religion when it played out, and then aspects to do with the concept of religion in court, and then analyzing Hyde's case in terms, and then Hussein Katamba's case also comes into play, Jefferson's theory in terms of religion and belief, and then church and state disambiguation, for example, and countries with state religions, for example, there are those that have that maybe as an escape route. That's the argument we also propounded one time when we were making the argument for homosexuality, that states that are fundamentally religious don't have so much trouble when it comes to some of those issues because they are basically guided by religion. But this is an argument in terms of when it comes to religion, in terms of that concept. It's very, very important book for you. We've got another book here which is super, super important. It's called the Legal Personhood of Artificial Intelligence. And this book here basically talks about questions the very essence of AI, what is happening today in terms of AI. AI is now adaptive in a way, and it's coming up with ideas and novel issues by itself. You give it a command, it comes up with something. So will it own the copyright? You know, these are questions, you know, the argument in terms of artificial intelligence viewed from a variety of perspectives. In terms of the philosophy of AI, what is AI, for example, the intellectual property legal regime governing AI, in terms of also best practices in terms of AI, copyright in AI, patent in AI, and then intangible assets and what they call autonomous AI, aspects to do with legal persons or you know, a child under artificial intelligence, and then cases of studies in AI, copyright in AI, automated identification system, for example, viewing using AI data, aspects to do with you know, vessel-based AI, you know, transceives and satellite-based AI, types of testing and approval, robotics in terms of different types of robotics, new bots, big cogs, nanites, power sources, aspects to do with remote controlled systems, aspects to do with robot and judges, for example, judicial actors and artificial intelligence, AI, you know, lawyers and brief writers, which will remind me of one of the book where I told you, I think the future lawyer, where we're seeing the semblance of AI even acting as lawyers in courts. You know, there's one called Do Not Pay, which was sued for practicing law without having gone to law school, in spite of the fact that it was an AI. In China now they're using it to deliberate on issues and enter judgments. So these are aspects that we ask ourselves today in terms of the legality of AI, legal personhood in terms of the component of AI. Now we got this one here, which is extremely important as well. It's called The Psychology of Law. Very, very important book because I think lawyers need to comprehend this. I know many other disciplines teach psychology, but law psychology is duplicated in different subjects. How we should come out as a core subject, because it will give you the relevance, understanding psychology in relation to law. You know, what they call the biopsychology of cross-examination, personality and violence, the psychopathy and violence, intelligence and violence, nature versus nature debate, mental illness, psychiatric disorders, assessment of insanity, psychiatric evidence, all these forensic psychology, all these aspects are juvenile delinquency, all these are aspects that are important for a lawyer to comprehend even before they begin exercising their mandate in the courts of law. So this becomes important in terms of the psychology of law and how its applicability in Uganda today. I know this is the same as this, so we're going to talk about another one here, important book here, called Sexuality, Gender and Disability Law in Uganda. This is another groundbreaking book also talking about disability law in Uganda. Very, very important book for us to comprehend. And in this book, we are basically talking about things to do with what does sexuality mean and does it matter, history of our sexuality, in terms of the comprehension of today's sexual law, sexuality in Uganda, you know, sex and gender, state and gender, equality in Uganda, sex and gender-based violence, for example, gender and international law bias, you know, theories of creating nations in terms of genderness, blood and belonging, feminism and nationalism, gender and international relations, and then aspects of disability, gender and family law, disability comes in here, gender and criminal law as well, and then separation from parents in terms of apprehension, and then you know, LGBT and the right, a little bit of recognition of same-sex relationship, recognition of transgender identity, then aspects of pornography, by the way, the affection of exchange theory, and then psychological effects as well. Then HIV again, sex trafficking, you know, masturbation, polygamy, polyandry, all those aspects. So we make a philosophical discourse. So it's a big book in that context of comprehending it. You may want to find this as well. Very important book as well. We've got another interesting one here called The Law of Music in Uganda. The Law of Music in Uganda is another important book that you may want to comprehend, and it talks about basically the things that we all enjoy in music, left, right, and center. Here we are basically talking about the legal aspects of music industry, music copyright, music industry in terms of the requirement, in terms of the strategies for copyrighting them, in terms of music publishing, for example, then infringement in terms of the copyright, and then trademarks, and then entertainment industry, in terms of record labels, in terms of live performances, in terms of copywriting, in terms of copyright ownership, in terms of ways to maximize your rights, for example, as a musician, or perhaps or as an entertainer, then internet and music copyright. So important aspects, relationship between radios and records, and relationship between record labels and artists, between producers, between name it. So this is another important book that you may want to comprehend, because it's a super important book in terms of the law of music in Uganda. We've got another one here called Freedom Through the Law. Freedom Through the Law is another wonderful book. Some of you probably heard of Lord Denning. Lord Denning wrote an article, a book of sorts, also something to do with freedom through the law. But here, the argument that I propound here is the argument that the law is a dogma. And so I'm asking an advocate, I'm asking myself of whether or not we can try to free this animal called the dogma of the law in terms of understanding the origin, the theories, what they call the Roman Germanic legal system, the common law family, the relations between Roman Germanic and then the common law as an introductory part, obviously, and then the nature of the law in terms of what it should be, and in terms of the dogma of the law, how the law became a dogma, and how it should be freed in terms of the law precedents, in terms of their advantages and their weaknesses, and then positive law as the thoughtful of people like Thomas Hobbes, and then Jeremy Bentham, and also John Austin in terms of those arguments. So, and then the law as a cloak in terms of that underscoring. So this is another aspect, important book for jurisprudence. Another book here that I want to talk about is called The Guardian of the Mind. Guardian of the Mind also, I got hold of this ideology or this concept when I was in Germany with another wonderful, a psychologist with wide experience. So we got some ideas and got down to write something to do with navigating the tapestry of mental illness in terms of associated mental illness within the protective laws in Uganda. And Guardians of the Mind is extremely important because we know what we're going through. We're told that all of us have a certain turpitude of insanity of sorts. But here we are talking about understanding the mental illnesses in Uganda, for example, the protective laws, accessing the mental health services in terms of professionals, in terms of their roles, in terms of the cultural beliefs and stigma, protection, navigating the Parkinson's, for example, mental health challenges, and international comparison analysis and what we need to do, and then so it's a very important book for you to comprehend in terms of protecting the mind, Guardians of the Mind. Look for it. Then we have got an interesting book here called The Law of Persons with Special Needs, Advocacy for Redemption and Disenfranchisement in Uganda. And this is another book, because its emphasis is basically placed on special needs for children. And we talk about the ancient ugly laws of disability, the community of disability, categories of people with special needs, individuals with physical disabilities, rights of people with special needs education, and then special needs in schools, then international recognition, disability policy, children with special needs, civil and political rights, and then criminal cases against people with special needs, and quite interesting arguments here, special needs trust, and then the articles in terms of the African Charter, war and disability. So it's a detailed book in terms of the making a case for people or persons with special needs. Look for this book as well. Another interesting book here is called Intelligent Design and the African Ontological and Epistemological Aesthetics, a Philosophical Discourse. Interesting, wonderful book Here the question I ask myself is, did Africa have a God, or was this God imported and imputed on us? That's the question that we ask ourselves, and it's a good dispensation because you discover interesting arguments here. Because I made an argument that after God, I think I made a quote somewhere here from it must have been Gabai, I think, who said that after creating the universe, God, went back into the cosmos and then became untouchable in a way. So the question is, do we have God in terms of Africa, or was this God, imported or imputed upon us, or is it the other way around? Did they come and take the God away and took him somewhere else? So this is a philosophical discourse in terms of the existence of God, or whether or not Africa did actually have God, in terms of theisms, in terms of the different understandings of atheism, in terms of the components of God in Africa, for example, then the aspect of mystical powers, the aspect of beliefs in many diversities, indigenous African religions today, and then the belief of the supreme being called God, the philosophy of religions also, and then the aspects of the history of religion. So we make all those components and those discussions in this particular book. You may want to find it a very interesting, wonderful book in terms of philosophical discourse. We've got this one here, which is important, called The Future Lawyer, Solving Criminal and Civil Puzzles, Evolution of the Next Generation Intelligence. This is what I was telling you about, the argument of the future lawyer. Are we afraid that AI is going to take over, especially for lawyers or for any particular trade for that purpose? So we make that dispensation in terms of how AI works, how AI will affect the future's work in terms of the lawyers, and then aspects to do with transhumanism and their effects, aspects to do with the foundations of intelligence, aspects to do with the evolving legal landscape, the adaptability, the future lawyer, for example, criminal and physical intelligence. And then I talked about the first AI lawyer, they call it do not pay, and then the implications of suing it, and then the applicability of judicial proceedings in China where AI has taken over. So these are aspects that we ask ourselves, whether or not AI is taking over the lawyer's job. You want to look at this and then comprehend some of those arguments in this particular book. This is another wonderful book that we wrote, probably the first one we did. It's called The Treatise from a Learned Friend and the Attorney at Law. Interesting, wonderful book here. This book has a lot of important aspects. We actually reduced this book, by the way, into audio as well. We got an audio book out of it. This is the audio version of it. So this is the hard copy of it, and this is the audio version. Now the audio version is also readily available as well. You can see wonderful audios here, and these are the first of its kind, together with the history of Busoga, by the way. To remember history of Busoga here is also we reduced also this in audio book, as you can see. So you can find this, and they're all available, by the way, on the net, readily available. And these are incredible, well dramatized books, well documented, well choreographed by wonderful people. So this Treatise to My Learned Friend and the Attorney at Law is a book that talks about wonderful dispensations of, I call it a masterpiece. I call it a will to my children in one way or the other, because it basically talks about how to survive, what makes things, talk about things like the Attorney at Law, awakening the giant within you, dreams of destiny, how to achieve your dream, tough minds, reflections, invectors, and I make wonderful prayers. So it's a important aspect in terms of those of what wonderful people have actually had to say and how to thrive in life. So this is another important book that you may want to look out for as well. Another wonderful book that you may want to look out for is this one that we call Fashion, Design and Entertainment in Uganda. This is another important aspect. Talk about Miss Kavi and the likes. This is a book that will address issues to do with fashion, design, and entertainment law. It's basically the first comprehensive book that provides information on fashion, both in terms of international and regional level, in terms of the history of fashion industry, and it provides an ethical environment in which local and international contemporary fashion designs orientations can actually occur. And in terms of protecting those rights, in terms of the mandates, how do you patent, how do you protect your property, how do you trademark it in terms of that. So the history is provided for what the players want, the development, the law of cosmetics, the design law, entertainment law, and subsidiary rights, acquisition, licensing, all those aspects in terms of how it's provided for in terms of fashion, design, and entertainment as a question of importance. Very, very important aspect. I know we talked about this already in terms of Treatise to Somalian Train, the Alternate Law. These were the audio books that I talked about. I know you talked about this. Then we talked about, there's this one here. It's called Angels of Africa, which is written and dedicated to my friends in Germany, Mrs. Martina Muller and Mr. Uwe Muller. Wonderful, incredible people, and how much they've done for Africa in terms of supporting Morning Joy ministries and several people in terms of how, what they have done for the world from their benevolent hearts in terms of the spread of the word of God, but also more importantly living the Bible as it is, and particularly looking at Hosea 4 in terms of what the dispensation that God has gave this incredible lady called Martina and Mr. Uwe as well in Germany. Yes, then we have this super important package here. Here, this is called, part of it is this, is called Competitive Matriculation, a guide to oral exams, aptitude test interviews, and undergraduate, postgraduate law schools. Basically, this is a summary of what you would probably ever want to know as far as passing what is substantively an oral exam, or maybe an interview of sorts, an aptitude interview in terms of oral exam, or interviews in terms of things that basically thrive within the context of the practicability of the law, as it were. For example, this is for criminal law, and when you look at these ones here, if I can be kind enough to put them here, you'll see that they have different forms. They have one in civil, we have one in family, then we have got the big one, corporate law and commercial, and then we have got one in criminal, in civil litigation. So all this is oral, basically. It's called competitive matriculation. It's a guide to aptitude tests, basically, interview for undergraduate, postgrad, and even master's level. So when you get hold of this, you definitely will enjoy it, because it's a summary of everything they will probably ever ask you in terms of in terms of law. By the way, it prepares you in terms of that context, and it's really a bridge together with this other set that I'm gonna pull here, which is another big one, because it's super big as well, so that you see and understand what we're talking about here in terms of the importance of some of these books and why we think they are necessary for us today. When you look at this guy here, I call him a guy because it's a very big, probably the biggest book in Uganda, if not Africa. It's called Objection, My Lord, and this is the complete set of Objection, My Lord. Now, Objection, My Lord has got about 7 or 8 parts. One has to do with land transaction, the other has to do with family law, then the other criminal law, then the other has to do with corporate and commercial, then the other has to do with civil, and then this is a must. This is a must. If I was anybody in this country, and by the word anybody, I mean anyone who is interested in scholarism, would look at this. This is extremely important. This has every document you ever need in practicing law in the world, not only in Uganda but in the world, and goes beyond just the petty things of LDC and the like. I mean, affidavits, for example, estoppel in terms of affidavits, apologies in terms of charge accounts, credit accounts, and these are documents. Reply to requests or to inquest, withdrawals of credits, aspects to do with agreements, partnership agreements, buying and selling of shares, and these are documented agreements. Stock option and incentive plans, financial demand for payment. All of them have apologies for credit payments, hiring employers, background check permissions, clerical responsibilities, extension of lease agreements, estate management purchases, description of lease premises, contracts, improvement, appurtenance, aspects to do with tenant plans, reminder to employee renew, response to inquiries, inquests, medical leave of absence. I mean, I could go on and go on and go on, but as you can see, it has every document that you would probably ever need in the world. So this is a must read for any substantive individual who wants to compete favorably at their job. And I'm just trying to put it back here so that, but as I said, this one comes with the objection, but it also has this version of isopre, which you can still pull out as well, like this. And they are all coming with their super hard covers, as you can see. And for example, this isopre, which is part of the entire objection, my lord, basically has stuff to do with things to do with, for example, introduction to management skills, aspects to do with accounting for lawyers, taxation, trial advocacy, professional conduct, many interesting things that you want to argue in terms of this as well. So this is another interesting book that you may want to comprehend and look at. When you have a combination of these, you will not go wrong. I can assure you, you will not go wrong in terms of understanding and comprehending. So this is the so-called popular objection, my lord, for the practicability of the law. But if you blend it with this guy here, then you have a complete set of these two. I can assure you that the world or the sky is no longer the limit for you. So as you've seen, I've labored to take you through all these books in terms of comprehending and trying to give you a dispensation of some of the works that we do at Sui Generis here. And the argument that we propound here is, as I said, publish, be cited, and then that's extremely important in terms of comprehensions of intellectualism or academics today. Okay, publish, be cited, or you perish. So we have been lucky that tomorrow perhaps history will judge us right. And all these books, by the way, are available on major bookstores in this country in terms of the major ones that you know perhaps, but majorly also on incredible stores like Amazon, Digital to Draft, Smashword, Lambert, Academia, many of these in the entire world, and even on almost all university repositories, major universities of this country, beginning from Makerere University, Uganda Christian University, Nkumba University, IU University, KIU, Nkozi, all major substantive universities have all these, but also readily available on lubogo.org. We have all these books available on lubogo.org and suigenerislawapp.com, which reminds me about the app that is also available called Sui Generis Law App, which you find on Play Store. There are two of the kind, but all of them done by me. And these books, as you have seen, probably about 40 plus have been gifted to us by nature, so that we can share what God has given us. And that's why when you go to lubogo.org, you'll find these free of charge, and you can use them for the betterment of your life. Our desire is to see that you become a much better individual, so that you can be able to serve society. That is what my desire would be, in spite of the fact that we hustle, toil, sweat to do this work. This is not something that I can tell you that has been easy. It's been a fight. It's been sleepless nights. It's been blood, sweat, and tears. Let no one lie you that writing is easy. It's the most difficult thing to do. It's painful, it's expensive, you get a lot of criticism, you get a lot of backlashes, and we're not saying that we are there, we're not saying that we are perfect. Many of the books may not be reviewed, because take an example, a book like that, Objection, My Lord, and ask someone to review it. They'll ask you for how much? About 10 million shillings just to review that book, but we shall get there. We are moving one by one, and some of them have been reviewed, luckily enough, but many of them haven't been reviewed because of the number, and because sometimes getting experts within those particular categories to review may be a challenge. But we are happy that many of these books have been taken over by the international community. Some of them have been translated now into French, into German, and you can readily, as I said, find them on the net. So take pride in them, and may the Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob bless you even as you enjoy and make this world a much better place and much simpler place. I think Dr. King said that when I die, I don't want to be remembered by the many accolades that I won. Don't even mention that I was a Nobel Prize winner, but I want to be remembered as a drum major for sounding the drum of justice. So tomorrow, I also want to be remembered as a person who contributed in terms of making your life simpler, or simpler in terms of intellectual advocacy, or trying to help you become a better scholar, a better individual in terms of people ask me, why do you write? Why do you give them out free? Because I know that if I can help my brother or sister achieve their goal and desire in terms of demystifying this big animal called the law, then my job will be complete. And I'm grateful for those of you who really thank and send gratitude to us, and we pray for you, and we pray that you also pray for us every day as we traverse this journey of life. May the Lord bless you. Thank you for your attention. Once again, my name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. Find all these works at lubogo.org and suegeneslawup.com. Thank you, and God bless you.